Welcome Rockstars. Today we're going to be talking about why the Dragon Ball Z DLC was actually a massive failure, even if it does become popular at some point for Minecraft. Now first of all, before we get too far into this is hopefully going to be a shorter video. I don't want to ramble on too much, and we did talk about a lot of these similar topics in my actual Dragon Ball Minecraft DLC video, which grab a drink and some snacks if you want to watch it. It's over an hour long, and we basically run through in 100% the entire DLC in that, so I do recommend that. So let's dive into the most basic and obvious issues that don't involve the gameplay mechanics whatsoever yet with the Dragon Ball DLC mod pack. First of all, yes, it does look at least good visually, especially because of vibrant visuals on the Minecraft Bedrock version. But the biggest problem with the entire thing, especially since it was released after the Superman DLC, is the fact that it has no story. It is a purely tournament fight-esque DLC that you spam buttons in, and we'll get into the button spam later, which is kind of annoying. But the best way to go at this is why it's kind of problematic that there's no story-esque thing and it's just a bunch of fighting in general, even though that is what Dragon Ball is all about, is the fighting, is the Superman DLC lays it out right there for us. It was right there, the answer to them. The Superman DLC follows the recent Superman movie from James Gunn and David Cornsweet, and it actually follows the general story of the movie. So you have an entire storyline that for most basic players probably take an hour to 2 hours to act complete. So there's a lot of content in there for you to enjoy, and there's a lot that you do throughout actually going through the story. Each story has little sections, and those little sections have their own missions, quests, and everything, whether it's blowing up boxes or generators, it's rescuing villagers, sometimes cats from trees. There was a progression. You knew where you were going, and obviously it was styled up Minecraft style for Minecraft, but you had objectives. You would go somewhere and you would do something, and so as Superman you would, oh, there's these weather or nether pigs coming to invade us as we're trying to do whatever, so we have to save the Justice Gang while destroying generators and fighting these piglins that come out of these things. And it was all connected basically, and I'm already starting to ramble a little bit, but it had flow, it had progression. There was a story to be told, to enjoy. There was something for you to do outside of just spam the attack button. Even after you finished the main story and the Superman DLC, you still had little main side missions that you could do for separate civilians and whatnot that weren't very long, obviously, and didn't evolve a lot, but it was still a story aspect that you could actually do. It was a quest for you to do. It was something for you to go out and follow and explore the open world that you were provided for Metropolis with Superman. But you weren't provided an open world or a story for the Dragon Ball DLC. It straight up is just the tournament with different tournament areas that doesn't make sense whatsoever, which is upsetting because Dragon Ball has so much lore and so much story that it was really disappointing that they didn't focus on any story at all, especially being specifically a DBZ and not just a Dragon Ball crossover with Minecraft. DBZ is one of the best and well-known versions of all the Dragon Ball storylines and animes and mangas. Basically, that's Dragon Ball Z is what's most well-known. Not Dragon Ball Super, not the original 80s anime, not GT, not even Dynamo, the most recently released version. DBZ is the most well-known version of Dragon Ball. So you dive into the game and you obviously get a tutorial on how to fight and whatnot, and the fighting was not fantastic. The game mechanics were not. It was glitchy, it was a little stuttery, especially when recording, and there were also problematic issues with the simple fact that sometimes the visual animations didn't work. It was really hard to see what you were doing when you were fighting sometimes because you were permanently locked into third person no matter what. And I think the absolute biggest ripoff, considering that Dragon Ball Z is an actual martial arts-esque style of genre, of IP, of storytelling, anything you want to call it. Superman is fighting, yes, but it's about superpowers, superheroes, hope, a different type of story. And they actually had things like realistic, or not realistic fighting, but better fighting. Unlike in the Dragon Ball DLC where you just spam your basic attack button for punches and kicks and it does it for you. In Superman, you could spam, but there were specific combos and stuff you could do. You could do 3 hits with him, you could freeze him and charge up a super punch, or if you really wanted to, you could hit, jump and hit, which would cause you to do an uppercut to the person, and then you could jump up after him, follow him, and then punch him back to the ground for a finishing move. So there was actual combo combos that you could run with your abilities and your strength in Superman, and it's not even the actual fighting storyline or game or anything like that. It was really upsetting. It was just a spam game, and the abilities were the same way. There was no limitation on the abilities outside of the timers, and the only real difference, which was a good difference between the heroes specifically, I guess, it actually was a really good difference, is each special move for each character was designed around their actual moves or their style of fighting from the actual anime. But that was it. The specific transformations that have been released weren't available. The transformations did something, but they weren't very long lasting. And you only had one transformation for basically everyone. Like, Gohan didn't even get a special move, but he still got Super Saiyan, even though in DBZ Ultimate was his best form. And then they have a skin for Goku for Super Saiyan 3, but it doesn't actually do anything but make you look like a Super Saiyan 3. And when you go Super Saiyan, sometimes it just looks like Super Saiyan 2 because it has the blue electricity that Super Saiyan 2 has, instead of just being a regular Super Saiyan. So it's kind of annoying. And then let's get into the tournament. The style of the tournament itself, for the most part, the rules and the concept is really not that bad. If you're facing in the World Martial Art Tournament from the Earth Tournament in the anime, you have the same concept. If you get knocked off the platform, you're also out, as well as a knockout. That's not really a problem. And you have 2 rounds of facing with someone that you can actually win against, so it's a 2 out of 3 map, and it's all about your health bar. So that makes sense, and that's not a bad concept. But what was bad is the 4 main bosses, the 4 big bads from the actual evil people who are the villains in DBZ, were not in the correct order. So you start off fighting against Piccolo, but technically it's not, I mean, it's Piccolo, but at this time it would be Ma Jr., because you're facing him in the World Martial Arts Tournament, and that is technically when he was still Piccolo Jr. or Demon King Piccolo Jr. or Ma Jr. It wasn't just being called Piccolo yet, which fine, we can get past. But then you move on next to fighting Perfect Form Cell at Cell Games Arena, which makes absolutely no sense at all. I guess if you're not following a story, it doesn't matter that you fight him in the wrong order, but it's just really bothersome for as a Dragon Ball fan. Which then you move on to the Frieza fight on Namek, which was super annoying. And what I realized throughout all of these fights, there was only one area with any real destructible terrain, and that was the pillars at the Cell's arena for Cell Game. Those pillars on the corners were the only thing destructible, which was upsetting because even though there wasn't a real destruction in Superman, there was plenty of planned out destruction. When you fight Kaiju, he clearly destroys the ground, leaving footprints that are there for the rest of the story and the rest of the game that you play. It wouldn't have been that hard for them to, register a laser hit on this building or this, this mountain, and kablooey, it blows it up. That wouldn't have been all that difficult now, would it? It really wouldn't have been. And there's no open world at all. You don't get to explore Namek or Cell's Arena, the rest of Earth, anywhere but a tiny area of Capsule Corp. You can't leave Kami's lookout tower. You don't even get to see Korin. But anyways, you finish off fighting Frieza after Perfect Form Cell and Piccolo. And you know who your next battle is? It is Oozaru Form Vegeta from the original Saiyan Saga at the start of Dragon Ball Z. Wow, the first big bad is the final big bad. It doesn't make any sense. And like I said before, I guess if you're not following a story, that really doesn't matter, but it is quite bothersome. I will give him some credit. Fighting the actual giant ape itself, he had some very good hit mechanics and hitboxes. I can give them credit for that. It would actually register properly if I was close or too far away for his massive size, because there is obviously a character size difference, and would actually register most of my beams. But the fact that we were stuck in third person, we couldn't play in first person, and anytime you used a certain attack, that would make it really difficult because you couldn't exactly see where you were aiming. So there were a few problems with it, and then I mean the obvious ones, the animations, the glitching. I had 2 times where I went to go enter specific fights and it would just not load in my abilities or the enemy that I was facing, and I would just be in the arena and have to close out the entire game and restart it. It kind of just felt to me that they put a bunch more work into the Superman Superman DLC. If the Superman DLC came out after the Dragon Ball DLC, this honestly probably wouldn't have been as big of an issue. Going from the Superman DLC into the Dragon Ball DLC, I expected a story, I expected immersive gameplay, I expected us to have key bars that would limit our energy attacks like Kamehameha waves or anything like that, but no, that was not the case. And like I said before, some of the attacks, most of the attacks were actually really, really good. They were designed based off the actual fighter or character from DBZ. There was instant transmission. Multiple people obviously had Kamehameha waves. We had solar flare from Krillin. We had laser death beams specifically that were Frieza's from Frieza. Vegeta had his Gatling gun, which was really, really cool, and his speed mirage mini attack and whatnot. But overall, the entire thing was just a disappointment. It was a spam clicky fighting game that had nothing but endless tournaments, and then it was super glitchy. Like I spent so much time recording it, I was like, okay, well, we're just gonna 100% the DLC, right? Which at that point was after unlocking all the characters and playing them was basically, and we had already defeated the hard mode of the tournament, and you can't do anything but the tournament unless you play online specifically for PvP against other players. You can't PvP against multiple AIs, that's not allowed. I was collecting my collectibles, and you straight up can't collect the last one. I don't know if it was a glitch or what, but Master Roshi's turtle shell never appeared no matter what I did, and you were supposed to get collectibles after earning achievements, and the only achievement I had left was to collect the last collectible because it was completionist. I'm really disappointed that Super Saiyan 3 was just a skin, and you only get it once you collect the 7 Dragon Balls, and that's the only thing the Dragon Balls are good for the Super Saiyan 3 skin, and it makes absolutely no difference. I feel like that sometimes it's impossible to get your Super Saiyan ability or your ki charge for your ultimate move unless you're playing on the difficult mode, and even then, sometimes it was easier to defeat the opponent without the ultimate move, you know? Sometimes it was just easier that way. I know they went for a balance, but obviously other characters are stronger than certain characters, and no matter who you played as, you always did 1 damage with your punch and kicks, and all the other special attacks were rated specifically for that character, but they were all within 1 to 3 damage of each other depending on the style of that attack. So overall, I want to give it a 5 out of 10. There's a lot of amazing starts to it, and then everything else just completely falls off. It's really, 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 really sad and really, really annoying, and it's probably it was the biggest waste of $9 to $10 I have ever spent on Minecraft for a DLC, especially the worst $9 to $10 I ever spent on content. It was not worth it, and obviously as a small creator, I don't make back all the money that I spent on the channel, and so I felt good about spending the 10 or so bucks that it was for the Superman DLC. I got a good video out of it, and the video performed decently well and whatnot. The Dragon Ball video, it performed okay, but that's not why I'm upset with it. I wasn't sure Dragon Ball DLC would do good. It's not exactly a hot topic or searchable topic or anything like that for Minecraft, especially since there hasn't been a Dragon Ball Z mod since Dragon Block C in 1710. So it was just a big disappointment overall. I felt like there was so much they could have done with it, with so many years of rich history through Dragon Ball lore, from the original 80s anime all the way up to Dragon Ball Super and the Superhero movie and the Super Broly movie. There was so much they could have covered, so many different forms, and they really, really let me down. So hopefully they change it. There's an update or something, but leave a like, comment, subscribe down below if you guys did enjoy the video. Let me know what you guys thought about the DLC yourself, or if you watched my video on it, and otherwise, I hope you guys all did have a great, fantastic day, and I'll see you all tomorrow, Rockstars. Until then, peace.